All right, so I wanted to take a minute to share with you some information that just came across my news feed that flew by the radar just earlier today, but it was released, and it has a lot to do with the possibility. And let me just start off with saying, nothing's for certain, but then again, based upon all the activity that's happening around the world right now, and in particular, the impact that the debt and the bonds that are, for the most part, underwater right now, the amount of damage it's causing the banks is becoming of major concern for a lot of big eyes and monetary influencers of the system. And so came across some very interesting articles here I'm going to share with you in a minute, but it has a lot to do with the possibility of a systemic bank event happening, what could be imminent to say the least. But then again, I shared an article or a little caption yesterday in the Telegram page, and I'll share that with you now. And this is what really got me thinking. And as I put some pieces of the puzzle together, try to make sense of it all, it's starting to line up very clear, cut, and precise. And so here we have on the screen, this is a Twitter tweet X, well, I'm not sure what they call it nowadays, but something that came out yesterday that was posted on an account. And as you can see on the screen here, it says, breaking, Senator Ted Cruz has sold up to 500,000 of Goldman Sachs stock. It says Cruz's wife is the managing director of Goldman Sachs. This is the largest trade we've ever seen from Cruz. And so when I saw that, I shared it in a Telegram community post there. So if you guys are not, I want to encourage you, make sure you plug in with the actual Telegram page, because that's where I share stuff throughout the day. So you'll never be left behind when it comes time to getting a hold of information in real time. But real quick, I wanted to just connect with you guys and share with you some things that caught my attention, some headlines that is very alarming to say the least. And as I'm reading through it, trying to understand exactly what it all entails, it has to do with the probability of a bail-in, which of course we know is already on the books according to what was established in, I think it was 2010 with the Dodd-Frank Act that came about after the GFC. But according to what could be brewing now, due to the $26 trillion US Treasury market, there's a lot of losses taking place right now. And they're trying to strategically prepare for whatever is coming. So let's dive right in. Here is, before I do that, here is more information briefly on that tweet that I put out there that actually made the headline on Finbow. But as you can see here, monster insider trading alert. Ted Cruz sells up to 500,000 of Goldman Sachs stock. And it goes on and talk about some of the highlights here. It says specifically, this I say, as it happens, Cruz has recently sold nearly 500,000 of Goldman Sachs stock, while at the same time, critics point out that his wife, Heidi Cruz, was the managing director at the said investment banking and securities behemoth. It says specifically, the politician disclosed a sale of between $250,000 and $1 and 500,000 worth of GS shares from April 15th, 2024. So literally a week and a half ago. And the most recent U.S. Senate financial disclosure period, transaction period, according to the information shared by politicians, stock trades, a monitoring platform on congresstrading.com as of April 24th, which was yesterday. So literally this information is just surfacing. What would make Ted Cruz decide to sell such a large portion of a particular bank, unless he perhaps knew something or just deciding to take some skin out the game? Who knows? But I would submit that he knows something is coming. And what could that entail? Let's get into this headline here. So literally, this came out today. It says regulators told to be ready to handle failed clearinghouses. This came out today, April 25th at 4:26 a.m. And so CME Group, Deutsche Börse AG, Intercontinental Exchange are three of the clearinghouses that they're referring to here. And this is somewhat of a lengthy article here, but then again, it's well worth reading because I think it has some ramifications that will be literally systemic in nature, just the way it's being set up here and the sense of urgency that I took from just reading this article. So I'm going to read through it and shout some highlights on it, and we're going to dive a little deeper just because this is important. And as of right now, I haven't heard this anywhere, but I'll dive into it further. Let me get to it. It says regulators must equip themselves with tools such as bail-in bonds to deal quickly with a failed clearinghouse for stocks, bonds, or derivatives. And might I add that when it comes to derivatives, we haven't heard much about that, but the last time I checked, we're looking at close to $2 quadrillion worth of derivatives, ultimately back in gambling done by institutions with depositors' funds, for the most part, in a fractional reserve nature, where they take out all these contracts of a variety of forms, ultimately betting on all types of things. And once again, it's all on ledgers. So it's nothing actually physically being traded or moved around other than just promises to pay if certain things happen in the markets. So as of right now, because of all these bets that were taken out, in a sense, just keep it very general, there's a lot of losses being taken right now, especially because we're in a high interest rate environment. And as we witnessed from last March, when the banking sector decided to go belly up due to those bonds that are underperforming right now, we saw all the programs that came about but now we're witnessing something that is also on that same level of systemic in nature. And so I'm like, okay, as I'm reading this, I'm saying, what exactly are bail-in bonds outside the obvious of the word bail-in? So I decided to look that up. And so as of right here, I just basically asked perplexity, what are bail-in bonds? Bail-in bonds are a type of debt instrument that would be written off or converted to equity in the event of a bank crisis before depositors lose any money. So literally a debt instrument created out of nowhere, used to, I guess, reassure liquidity for that particular entity, staving off an emergency, which would ultimately result in some type of bank run where it would impact depositors. So this is what they are suggesting, a debt instrument on top of all the other debt that is a problem in of itself in the event of a bank crisis. So that's a clue within of itself. It says here, this is some serious stuff. This is after the global financial crisis of 2007, 2009, regulators mandated clearing for a wide range of derivatives, meaning that they must pass through a clearer backed by a default fund to ensure completion of trades. It says most recently, the United States has adopted rules to force more trades in the 26 trillion US Treasury market through clearers. So what exactly they're talking about here? So in December, let me make sure this is on the screen. In December, there was some emergency scrambling by the US Treasury because of all the excess dumpage of US liabilities, as I like to call them, because nations are deciding to not come back in to fund, aka extend credit, by purchasing U.S. liabilities. And so they're literally trying to scramble on the back end to make sure clearinghouses, the intermediaries in between the government issuing them and the purchasers on the other end of that trade there, the clearers in the middle, have to literally step in to acquire more of them. So real quick here, just to give you an idea what's going on here, it says Wall Street's top regulator on Wednesday, this is referring to December 13th, when this first came out, adopted new rules aimed at reducing systemic risks in the 26 trillion U.S. Treasury market by forcing more trades through clearinghouses while offering some concessions following industry pushback. So literally, it says here the 5-member USE Exchange Commission voted 4-1 on Wednesday to finalize a new rule. It says proposed over a year ago, marking the most significant overhaul in decades of the world's largest bond market, a global benchmark for assets. So literally, this was a last-minute effort that was in the works for an entire year to get the clearinghouses to take on more of these trades, as it says here, that literally is a result of other nations deciding to opt out of our debt. Okay, so let me go back to here. But as you can see here, this to reduce a systemic risk in the 26 trillion US debt market. And it says here, as a result of such changes, more clearers have become vital to financial systems in more than one jurisdiction. So this is just not a contained event here in the US. More jurisdictions are also in need of intermediaries, clearinghouses, to take on more of this basically underperforming debt here, non-performing loans, in a sense, in order to keep this thing afloat. It says, meaning their failure could damage financial stability unless they can be stabilized or resolved, meaning closed down in an orderly way. So the Financial Stability Board said its new standard, which builds on previous guidances, requires that adequate liquidity, loss absorbing, and recapitalization resources and tools are available to maintain the continuity of a clearer's critical functions. So literally, the clearinghouses in between, as I mentioned before, what are those clearinghouses? The three that I mentioned here: CME Group, Deutsche Börse, IEG, Intercontinental Exchange. Basically, systemically important clearinghouses in between all the other financial sectors that actually those funds flow through. So here we have just a lot of information here talking about systemic natures, just the sense of urgency here from this report on the importance of literally having tools, as it says here, tools in place. And the first tool was a bail-in bond, which is designed to create liquidity well before the emergency becomes a systemic event, which will ultimately lead into the depositors' funds being at risk. This is what's going on right now. This is what's going on behind the scenes. So anyway, I'll wrap this up with this, but definitely something of importance. It says it sets out 7 resources and tools that regulators are required to pick from, such as bail-in bonds issued by clearers that can be written down to plug losses, resolution funds, cash calls during resolution, and equity in a first loss position in resolution. So literally, during the bail-in process or prior to getting to the peak of the bail-in process, these are some steps that they would have to take in order to try to save face without creating a systemic event, which would then force the government to have to step in the same similar fashion with a last-minute congressional approval, like we witnessed with the GFC, where literally they said we were minutes away from the entire banking sector coming down if Congress didn't act with that particular emergency bailout. I think it was TARP, if I'm not mistaken. Literally, the government stepped in to bail out a failing banking system because of the things that they have created and benefited from at the expense of depositors as well as the American people. But this is 7 resources and tools that regulators are required to pick from. It says regulators will have to state publicly which tools they have selected. Laws could need changing or introducing in some countries to give regulators access to these tools. So literally, in a case of an emergency event where there's a liquidity crisis, institutions are having problems shoring up capital in time, you will have to pick between some of these tools here. With these tools here, you got to then broadcast it to all institutions so they know what type of tools are being used so they can use the same thing. And depending on where you're at, it says laws. They would have to change the laws in an emergency type of event to allow that to take place in the event of an emergency. It says temporary public funding for liquidity should be relied on only as a last resort. So literally, a government bailout should only be relied upon as a last resort. So literally, before we get to a government bailout during a systemic event, here's the tools that we need to do. Bailing bonds first, then the 7 tools are on the way, then a government bailout. So you see what's being set up right now. This is what's on the table. Something is coming. Something is already happening. It hasn't surfaced yet, but they're prepared for it. It says exchanges such as SLEG, ICE, CME, and Deutsche Börse all operate major clearinghouses that handle trades totaling trillions of dollars. The G20 economies commit to applying regulatory recommendations from the Financial Stability Board, and the watchdogs said it would monitor implementation and publish its findings. So this is what's on the table right now as I speak. Literally, right now as I'm speaking, this is some of the things that are taking place on the back end because the financial system is hemorrhaging. There's losses being taken. And as always, the banks are too big to fail. If the banks go down, if they were allowed to go down, it would take the entire monetary system with it. So instead of that, they got these steps in place to basically try to shore up as much liquidity as they can before the inevitable happens, which is running back to Uncle Sam, as well as other governments. And our government here, Congress coming together in some type of emergency meeting, literally calling for trillions of funds to then put back into the banks in hopes of it not leading to bank runs where depositors lose their funds. So anyway it go, no matter what, there's going to be the need for trillions of currency created in order to try to make this system stay afloat, barely. But anyway, systemic event is underway. Banks are in trouble. Something is coming very soon. With Ted Cruz dumping his Goldman Sachs stock lets us know that it's probably closer than what we like to admit. But then again, you now know. You're warned. There's writing here. This is emergency. So I would encourage you, share this so more people can find out what's going on. And I'll keep my eyes open, ears open, trying to find out more information as it comes along. But this is crucial. This is emergency type information here, I think. So anyway, I just want to get this out here real quick. Put your thoughts out there in the comment section. Share this so more people can find out what's going on. And I'll also put the articles in the description so you can look at it for yourself. Catch you guys later.